Welcome to another great free clinic on Virtual Football Clinic. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy it.
So we're a bit late, so we're going to start right there with Scott Brady, the defensive coordinator at McMaster University. So Scott, up to you.
Thanks a lot, man, Paul. Appreciate you guys having me. So I'm just going to be talking a little bit about our defensive game planning process. I've got a couple clips of film potentially to get to at the end, but this is more so just going to focus on what our week looks like as we're getting ready for an opponent, what our process is like, what our weekly prep schedule is like for the guys, and also how we go about, teaching them what our opponent's going to do, and a bit of a guide of how we want them watching film each and every week. So I'm just going to share my screen here, and then we'll get right into it. Sharps, is that up on the screen?
Yep, you're good there.
All right, awesome. All right, so just kind of quickly before I actually get into what we're doing throughout the week, obviously the first step that we do, the same as everybody else, is we want to get the data input from previous games. And so we're pretty much the same as what most teams do, whether it's CFL or U Sports teams. We typically look at our opponent's last 3 games. Where we try to differ, where we try to do something other than just looking at the last 3 games, is we will include in our breakdown every single week any previous games against our defense. And so if they've had a consistent offensive coordinator, consistent offensive system, and we've had the same defensive structure in previous years, we'll include any of those games, even if they're going back 3 or 4 years, because you're going to see consistent core run and pass concepts in terms of how they try to attack you. We want as much data input as possible. We're not necessarily going to communicate all of that to our players, but from the coach's standpoint, we want to break down as much as we possibly can. And then we're going to pick and choose what we actually give the guys in terms of tendencies and what we want them to know and understand going into the week. So there's instances where the coaches will maybe know more, and then we're waiting to see if these scenarios actually come up, and then we'll present it to the guys on the sideline. You'll see as we're going through this in our scouting report that we give the guys, we highlight certain things. And when we test the guys at the end of the week, those are the things that we really expect them to know and how to have a good grasp of. But then there's other situations where maybe it's not as critical that they know it, or just a slight tendency. But our coaches, or as coaches, we want to know as much as we possibly can, and then pick and choose what we disseminate to the players. Previous games against our defense or similar defenses always take precedence in the breakdown. And so one of the things that we try to do, we call them like mirror defense, so defenses that are structurally similar to us in our conference. I think if you can find 1 or 2 teams that are similar to you in terms of whether you're an HBR team and run the half back across, or whether you're a rock and roll team and you're going to tilt the free down and put the half in the post, whether you're a Sam travel team, or whether you're going to bump the linebackers, how much man versus zone and how much coverage versus pressure you're going to play. If you can have 1 to 2 defenses that are similar to you, the film sometimes can be misleading if, the tendencies are this, but everything that you've got on film is against, teams that run the Sam across, and you never do that. Well, that's not what you're going to see. And so you do have to look a little bit and have at least a base understanding of what do the other defenses in our league do? What's the structure of their defense? How much do they pressure these things? So then when you're looking at the film and how the offense that you're getting ready to prep for actually attacks these defense, you have to know if it's the same thing that you're going to see. So, for us, we've got 2 teams that we rely pretty heavily on. They're similar to us in terms of not running the halfback across, not running the Sam across most of the time, bring a lot of zone and man pressure, those types of things. And so if we can look at what our upcoming opponent did against those teams, those tendencies typically hold a lot more true against us, because offensive coordinators are going to attack, the structure of defense in the same way. So if they're playing a Sam travel team, they're going to attack that the same way every week. If they're playing a team that rocks and rolls the free in the half, they're going to do similar things against that. So for us, that's a starting point. The next little bit I'm going to talk about is actually what we're looking for and what we're breaking down about our opponent, and then some thoughts about how we try to defend certain things that come up out of that. So the starting point for us, once we have all the data input, everything starts with personnel. Okay. And so the most important thing for us when we're getting ready to play an opponent is who are their best players. And every single week, if you're to boil it down to like one simple philosophy, it's got to be we're trying to take away their 2 to 3 best players every single week. That's going to differ, according to the team. Sometimes you're dealing with a stud X receiver who's going to be ISO'd a lot. Sometimes it's a slot that they'll run fly sweeps and screens to. Sometimes running back, the quarterback obviously is a big concern. But when you're going through the film, the starting point has to be who are their best guys. You have to make your opponent beat you with their 4th or 5th or 6th best option. You can't lose to their number 1 or 2 option. You have to have a concrete plan for how you're going to take those guys away. One of the big things that we're trying to identify is, do we know where this guy's going to be? If you can say with certainty that their best player is always going to line up at the X receiver, that boundary number 1, you can have multiple answers for how you're going to take that guy away. If he's always going to be in that weak side slot, you can have multiple answers for how you're going to take him away, or are they going to move him around? The difference there is if they line up a guy in one spot all the time, it doesn't necessarily give you tendencies about what they're going to do with them there. When they start moving players around, typically you can find more tendencies with what they're going to do with certain guys lined in certain spots. The challenge is finding a simple way to communicate that to your guys. Okay, but one of the things we like is if they've got one stud receiver and they're lining them up, sometimes 1 week, 2 week, 2 strong in a 23 set, they're going to do very, very specific things with them out of that spot. And you want to make sure the guys understand when he's lined up here, this is what we're going to see. When he's lined up here, this is what we're going to see. And here's why they're trying to put him in this position. So like a general rule for us, again, if they're moving a guy around, especially their best guy, they're putting him there for a very specific reason. We want our guys to have a good understanding of what that is. How many personnel groupings they're going to get into is a big deal. And so we want to have all the personnel groupings broken down for our guys, who's coming in and who's coming out, whether it's a 5 receiver set, 2 back set, what does their 3 back stuff look like? Is it 2 fullbacks? Is it a fullback and a 6th offensive lineman? Because they're going to do very specific things with those guys. And really the starting point for us is, do we need to substitute when they get into some of these personnel packages? So if they're in a 5 receiver set, do we need to get a defensive back in at the Sam or even the Will linebacker position? If they get into a 3 back set, do we need to look at getting more defensive linemen or linebackers on the field? You want to figure out how you're going to match up with these different personnel groupings. And you want to make sure on day 1 of your prep week that you can communicate to the guys, when they're in this personnel, here's what we're going to have on the field. Here's why we're doing this. And you want to make sure that you've always got the matchups that you need to be successful against those personnel groupings. With each personnel grouping that we see, we want to present to our guys a summary of basically like, here's what they're trying to accomplish in this personnel. So I'll talk about the 3 back one as an example. A lot of teams, if they're getting into their 3 back personnel, it's either 2 fullbacks or a fullback and a 6th offensive lineman. There's typically a heavy run tendency there because they're putting bigger bodies on the field. But some teams, when they get into their 3 back stuff, really what they're trying to do is dictate a certain coverage so they can get one-on-ones on the outside with their receivers, right? So some 3 back teams, they're really doing it so they can throw more downfield play action and protect with 7 or 8 guys. Some of them, they just want you to get into a cover 3 or cover 1 so they can get one-on-one with a stud receiver on the outside with a waggle. And so 3 back, you have to look at each week, what is their philosophy, what is their approach when this personnel is on the field, and whether they actually trying to get out of it. Sometimes it is pretty straightforward and bigger bodies means run, but in other cases, bigger bodies means they're trying to dictate certain coverages and get good matchups for their guys on the outside. And then within that, a big question is, how do we match up with it? So especially in the run game, if they've got a fullback or 2 fullbacks on the field, are we going to be big enough up front that we can stop the run in our base personnel, or do we have to find a way to get bigger bodies on the field so that we can take away their base run game? For us, when we're breaking down the personnel, the 2 positions that we spend the most time on in terms of specific strengths and weaknesses of individual players is really the quarterback and the offensive line. And really within the offensive line, the most important one to us is the center. Okay, so for the quarterback, That's the most important position to break down individually. What is this guy good at? What's his strengths and weaknesses? You want to have a good understanding of how he's going to respond to pressure. And so, one of the mistakes that I've made in the past, and I think a lot of guys do, is you look at, does the offensive coordinator have answers for pressure? And really all of them do, even the bad ones do. The challenge is the quarterback understand what the answers are against pressure, and is he successful at finding them? So are they a team that tries to throw hot against pressure and we can spin a guy down into the window where they're trying to throw it? Are they a team that is going to try to bomber guys in and protect with 7 or 8 and throw double move or deeper routes downfield if they're expecting pressure? Offensive coordinators typically are going to do one of a couple things against that. It might be a heavy screen team, but when you're looking at the individual players on the other team, the most important one is the quarterback good at executing against this? They may have good answers called, but if the quarterback can't find the right guy or understand the answers or execute them at a high level, it still makes sense to bring pressure in those instances, even if they're getting into good calls against that. You got to understand if the quarterback's an option threat, right? So are they going to run the quarterback, and are they going to try to create a numbers advantage in the box running the quarterback where we need to start getting extra guys in there? What's his escapability like? And that's not just, is he a good runner? But some quarterbacks have a really good feel for navigating the pocket. Other quarterbacks, if you bring inside pressure and put something in their face, even if they are a good runner, they don't have a good feel for hanging in the pocket when things are picked up. And you can make them uncomfortable and make them pull the ball down and get him off of his first read just because they sense the pressure. Okay. And if you are playing a really good running quarterback, one of the big ones is, where does he want to escape? Is he always escaping to his throwing hand? Is he always escaping up in the pocket? Is he looking to go back and out the side door? Does he ever escape to his left if he's a right-handed quarterback? And so with the running quarterbacks, you want to have a good feel for where they're trying to escape and if you can force them in a certain direction and make them uncomfortable. Okay, and then with the offensive line, one of the big ones for us is we'll go through the offensive line. We want to rank them 1 to 5 every single week. And one of the starting points for us when we're putting in our blitz packages is, how can we get our very best guys on their number 4 or number 5 offensive lineman? Okay, and then I talked about the center being a big one for us to break down. The reason for that is that's the most immediate guy that you can affect either the snap potentially and force a bad snap. If you're bringing inside pressure, you're putting a really good offensive lineman right over top of him. But inside pressure is the best thing you can get against any quarterback. Lots of them struggle with it. So if you can win right over top of the center, that gives you a huge advantage, right? So we're looking at, how does this center do snapping the ball, executing his assignment when he's got to block a shade, when he's got to block a zero technique nose, and we've got the 2 guards covered so he can't get any help. And you want to see if he's capable of doing those things. Can we win just by making that center have to block somebody one-on-one, right? And then who are their worst guys and how can we get our best guys matched up on them? Okay, so this is an example of just from our scouting report of what our personnel groupings page would look like, right? So we're looking at how much are they in each personnel grouping for this team. I don't remember which one it was we were playing, but they were a team that primarily ran 3 core personnel groupings. You want to understand how much they're in them, so you have an idea of how many answers you're going to need, right? So for this team, they're in 2-back personnel, basically 50% of the game, right? 5 receiver sets, almost 30, and then they're 3BL, which for us is 3-back with the 6th offensive lineman, right? They're not even in 20%, so you potentially don't need as many answers for the 3-back stuff that you're going to see. And then when I talked earlier about identifying their best players and where they line up, for us, this team, the 2 guys that we were really concerned with were their W and their X, so number 12 and number 13, right? So we want to indicate to our guys where's their base alignment in a standard formation, so 2x2 or 3x2. We'll bold and underline these guys and make sure they understand this is their home position. So now if one of those players aligns somewhere else other than where we expect them to be in a 2-back or a 5R set, alarms start to go off that there's probably a reason they're putting that guy there. Okay. And then when you're looking at this and you start to understand this is a team that puts their best guys to that boundary side, you're already starting to get an idea of, okay, we're probably going to be tilting coverages into the boundary to take away those best guys because that's where they're putting the guys who can hurt us the most. Okay. And then within that, again, this is from the same game. you want to give a basic look to the guys of what are they trying to accomplish in each of these personnel groupings, right? So if you look down here at that 5 receiver set, this box right here, if they're in their 5 receiver personnel, they're basically an 80% pass team, right? And then if you look over here at their play tree, if they're in their 5 receiver set, over half of their plays are just 6-man drop back pass. 15% of them are mixed plays. So for us, those are RPO plays, so run pass option plays, and then nothing else is 10%. So really 70% of their offense out of 5 receiver sets is 6-man drop back pass or RPOs. You compare that to their 3-back personnel, and now when they get that 6th offensive lineman on the field, they're nearly 70% run. And now they've got more inside and outside zone than anything else, with a little bit of 7-man drop back pass. So you just want to give guys a base understanding of here's what they want to do out of each of these personnel groupings. Here's what they're trying to accomplish. These are their core play tendencies when they have this personnel grouping on the field. Okay, so after we do the personnel, the next thing that we want to do is we want to identify the core run and pass concepts for whoever we're playing. Okay, so it's cliche a little bit, but you really can't focus on trying to defend everything that you're going to see. So for us, we're looking at their top 4 to 5 runs and their top 8 to 10 passes. Okay, and that'll vary a little bit. If we're playing a heavy passing team, we're maybe only concerned with 2 to 3 runs, but now it's 12 or 13 pass concepts. But this is a starting point for us for a balanced offense in terms of what we're trying to take away. When we get into our practice week, most of what we're running in practice is these core plays against what we like against them. We'll run some specialty stuff. So we play a lot of quarters coverage. So you're going to see quarters beaters every single week. So you're going to see scissors. You're going to see like Mills concept with the post over top of the dig. You're going to see these things every week if you're running quarter stuff. So you're going to rep those every single week. But 80% of what we're running in our practice week is those top 4 to 5 runs, those top 8 to 10 passes. And all offenses, they really do the same thing, or at least the good ones do. They're going to game plan you every single week, and you're going to see a couple new things. But most of what you're going to get is just a different way of presenting those core runner pass concepts. The offenses that you play where the plays are changing every single week, and presents challenges in some way, but most of the time those teams aren't any good because they never get good at anything. And even for us, the teams that are toughest to play against are not the teams with the fewest tendencies. The best offensive we've ever played, they all have tendencies, but they get really, really, really good at running their core run and pass concepts. And so we got to spend a ton of our time trying to take those things away. So for us, when we're breaking down the run game, we're really looking at 3 things. So for us, run tree is basically what type of blocking scheme are we seeing up front? Are they primarily a zone blocking team? Are they primarily a gap blocking team up front? Because you're going to run different fronts and different pressures depending on whether they're primarily zone or gap blocking. Then we'll look at the specific run plays they're doing. So like Zorro is a zone read for us. Zebra is inside zone with somebody actually blocking the backside end. Saber's like a split zone play where the fullback's coming back across the formation to block the backside end. And one of the big ones for us is breaking down the point of attack. And really that's the biggest one for us in breaking down the run game. Where are they trying to hit the ball along the front out of each formation or personnel grouping? So are they running the ball inside? Are they trying to run gap stuff like power counter and hitting it off tackle area? How much are they trying to get the ball out on the perimeter on jet sweeps, on toss plays? And we want to have a good idea or a good understanding of where they're trying to hit the ball along the front. For the pass game, the 3 big ones for us. So pass tree is what type of pass protection basically are we getting? So are they throwing quick game? Is it, 5 or 7 step drop back pass? Are they a play action team? How much movement pass are we getting? So naked bootlegs or Sally plays. What protection are they running? So is it 6-man, 7-man, 8-man, 5-man empty protection? Are they a big on big protection team where, they're blocking the 4 down in the mic? Are they a 6 or 7-man half slide team where you've got half zone, half man protection? And the big one there is you're understanding when we get into like defending second and long, aside from who their worst players are, the very next thing we're looking at is what are their core protections? and you're going to attack certain protections in a very specific way. So you're not running the same blitzes against man protection as you are against half zone, half man protection, or full slide protection. And so you want to have a good understanding of how do they like to protect, how many guys are they going to keep in, so that you can have an effective blitz package against them that week. And then we'll get into the pass concept, the specific pass plays that they like to run. And again, a lot of teams are really running 8 to 10 concepts over and over and just finding different ways to present it or dress it up. But you want guys to have a good understanding of here's their core pass concepts in each situation. And here's how we want to take these away in our core coverages. So again, these are examples from one of our scouting reports during the season. This is what we would present to our guys in terms of a run game summary. And again, all the core information, like the coaches will have all of this. But when we're giving this to the guys, we're really just highlighting anything that's really important that we want them to understand and know going into the game. So for this team, when they're in their 2-back personnel, if you look over here at point of attack, right, inside run, so hitting in the A or B gaps, that was 72% of their runs out of 2-back. They got a little bit of off tackle, 24%, and then only on the perimeter 3 times, so 4% of their runs out of that. So what this does for us is you're not getting 100% certainty, but when they're in their 2-back personnel, if they're trying to hit the ball in the A or B gap 70+% of the time, that gives us a pretty good idea of what run pressures we want to get into that week. So now we're going to run like our double A gap stuff with our Mike and our Will potentially crossing in the A gaps. We're going to bring a defensive back inside as opposed to bring them off the edge, right? If they're trying to get the ball in the perimeter more, now you're potentially running different pressures and bring some defensive backs off the edge into that off tackle area. But if you can get a good idea of where the ball is going to hit along the front, it helps you come up with effective run pressures for that week. And then again, like in their 5R personnel, this same team, now you can see their run game is very different. They were getting in 5R and nearly 70% of their run plays out of 5R were RPOs. So now when we're talking to our guys that week, we can tell them if they're in 5 receiver sets, there's a very good chance that our Will or our Mike linebacker, depending on the formation, is getting read, whereas that's not really a big concern when they're in their 2-back stuff. And so they can start to anticipate some of these things and react a little bit quicker. Okay, and then again, this is the same team. This is their pass game summary. So now we're looking at specific protections. And again, if you look at the 2-back protection here, so these are their top protections when they're in 2-back personnel. So R71 or 71 for us, those are 7-man protections with the running back blocking to the weak side of the line of scrimmage. So they're half slide protections. So whether it's bombering somebody in and running 7-man protection or 7-man protection with 2 backs in the backfield, we got a pretty good idea that that running back is going to be the weak side of the formation, and they're going to be sliding the protection to the strong side. So now when we start to look at what pressures we want to bring, well, we want to bring stuff off the weak side, whether it's inside or off the edge. And now if we bring our Will or our weak half or our free safety off that weak side, we can potentially make that running back have to block him one-on-one, and we can waste 3 or 4 offensive linemen away from the pressure. So for the pass game, when you're looking at the protections, again, it's who's their worst offensive lineman? How can we get a good matchup on him? Where's the running back going to be in protection? A lot of what we see is half slide protection, so 6 or 7-man half slide, and the running back's going to be to the man side. So how can we get one of our best rushers matched up on that running back? And if you can get a good tell on where he's going to be, it gives you a good chance to get home to the quarterback. After we break down the protections, the next thing for us is explosive plays and deep balls. And so this ties right back into the personnel, but any of the stats that you look at for what actually wins football games, it really comes down to explosive plays and takeaways, right? If you win the explosive play margin, if you win the takeaway margin each week, you know, odds are pretty good that you're going to win that game. For us, for pass defense, the starting point for us is always how can we defend a deep ball, right? What do we need to do to defend the deep ball and make sure we eliminate explosive plays in the passing game? A lot of it ties back to personnel. So who is creating their explosive plays? Who do they like to throw deep balls to, right? For deep balls, do they like to do them in certain parts of the field? Some offenses, right, they won't put the ball up downfield until they get across midfield. And then as soon as they cross midfield, Now they're almost always going to try to take a deep shot to turn it into a touchdown. Some teams, if they're backed up, they like to take deep shots. You're trying to get a feel for where they're going to put the ball up deep. Will they do it out of 6-man protection? Will they only throw the ball downfield? And if they're blocking with 7 or 8 and they're bringing bigger bodies in onto the field to protect with. So you got to know who they're throwing the ball to downfield. Who do we need to worry about staying over the top of? And then what other tells do they have that tell us there's a good chance that they're potentially throwing the ball downfield? So again, this is from a scouting report that we used during the season. This would be the explosive play and deep ball summary present to the guys. So I'll just show you a couple things here. Under the explosive category, right here, you can see number 13 had 8 explosives. So for us, that's 15+ yard runs or 20+ yard receptions. Nobody else on their offense had more than 4. Right. So all of a sudden you're going into that prep week and you're saying, okay, he's got twice as many explosive plays as anybody else on that offense. We got to understand how he's getting them, but we have to pay special attention to number 13 because he's the guy who's going to create those plays that potentially lose football games. When you look at the deep balls and where they're throwing the ball to, there's a huge first down tendency for this team. So they had 13 deep balls on first down. They only had 3 on P and 10. They didn't have a ton on any other down and distance. And that's common with a lot of offenses. They're not going to throw the ball deep downfield the second they step on the field. On second down, they're just trying to move the chains and convert a first down. But first down is a huge deep ball down for a lot of teams because they've already gained 1 or 2 first downs on the drive. So they feel like they've had a good drive. And now they want to take their shot after they pick up a couple first downs. Right. And again, if you look at the targets for their deep balls, number 13 had 14 deep ball targets. Their next best guy had 6. And then their next best guy had 4. So he's again getting twice as many deep balls as anybody else on the offense. He's getting half of the deep balls that they've thrown all year. So we have to know where he is at all times. We got to make sure we've got somebody at least 5 yards over the top of him at all times because that's their biggest deep ball threat. Right. So you got to emphasize to your guys the critical importance of winning the explosive play and takeaway margin. And it really starts with understanding who's creating the explosives for them, who are they throwing the ball downfield to, and how can we take that guy away. The next couple here, I'll go through a little quicker, but we'll spend a good amount of time breaking down the screen game. Okay, screens is a big one for a lot of offenses, trying to get the ball into their most dynamic guys' hands. So we'll spend more time on that. What down and distance do they like to throw their screens out of? What personnel do they want to be in? What field zone are they in when they're throwing the screen game? And then all gadget plays we will present to our guys on the clip. So for the gadgets, we won't just rely on the last 3 games. We'll have a separate category of all the gadget plays from the last couple years from each team that we play. And that way we present like a 5 or 6 or 7 clip playlist to the guys so that they can see all the gadgets they've run over the past couple years, because most offensive coordinators, they're going to recycle this through the same, 3 or 4 gadget plays every couple years. So that one we'll go a little further into. Again, this is an example from a specific scouting report this year, but for this screen game for this team, 80% of the screens they threw the whole year were out of 5 receiver personnel. They didn't throw as many out of, heavier personnel groupings. So when they put 5 receivers on the field, that was a bigger concern. And again, their big one here is 4-by-1 formations. They threw 11 screens. Their next most common was 3-by-2, and they only had 6. So when they start to get into that 41 formation, again, you start to think, okay, hit screen to the X receiver, slip screen to the tailback to the weak side, because they know there's not as many bodies over there. Okay, but we want to understand who they're throwing the ball to in their screen game, because often those guys are dynamic and create explosive plays. Down and distance tendencies. So these and the formation hit charts that I'll talk about in a minute are really what we spend the most amount of time on with our guys. Any situation that we run in practice throughout the week, it's never just an isolated this play against this defense. We always want to make sure that we have a specific situation attached to it. And I'll talk about it a little bit later, but we'll rep specific situations each day of the week, right? And so we're not showing all the guys on the first day of the week, here's what they're doing in 12 different situations. At the start of the week, the first meeting is, okay, here's what we're getting on PN10, first down, here's what we're getting in the red zone. And then we'll build on that throughout the week so the guys actually have a chance to learn it all. right? So these are the down and distance situations that we'll actually break down. So P and 10 for us is, and most teams do this, is different than first down, right? So P and 10 is the first play of a new series, and then first down for us is really only an earned first down. So what are they doing once they've actually picked up a first down on the drive? We'll do first and less than 10, first and more than 10. So what are they doing after an offensive or defensive penalty? And then for the second down situations, these are just some general notes on what you're getting from most teams week to week in each one of these. Obviously, it's different with each offense, but there's a lot of carryover with how offensive coordinators approach each situation. So even going back to like our spring camp or training camp, this is how we'll present these situations to these guys, so they start to have a base understanding of what they can typically expect to see. So 2nd and 2 to 3, that's typically like a short yardage rundown for most offenses. 2nd and 4 to 6, so second and medium for us, you start to anticipate quick game, or if offenses expect you to be in more man there because you don't want to give up a short completion, now you're going to get more pick and rub routes. So you're going to get crosser game or mesh or fence or whatever you want to call it, and they're going to try to get guys chasing in man coverage with guys picking them off. 2nd and 7 to 10 is our 2nd and long. 2nd and 11 plus would be 2nd and extra long. So now most teams in those down and distances are actually trying to throw the ball to the sticks or just slightly past them to convert a first down. So defensive backs and linebackers have to have a really good understanding of where the sticks are and where the offense needs to get to pick up a first down. 2nd and extra long, one of the big things that we try to do is be able to tell our guys, here's kind of their tap out distance. So most offenses will have a distance where they're not actually trying to pick up the first down anymore, and they're just trying to run a conservative play and not turn the ball over and punt it away. So is it 14, 15, 16, 17 yards where they're not going to actually try to throw the ball downfield, and they're just going to run a screen or a quarterback draw or hand the ball to the back, try to pick up something positive, not turn the ball over, punt the ball away. 2nd and 1 and 3rd and 1, we'll spend a good amount of time on. So 2nd and 1, you got to make sure from day one guys understand that's a shot down, because they're going to go for it on 3rd and 1 in Canadian football anyway. So guys have to know on 2nd and 1 that you've got to get depth. You have to anticipate play action or some kind of deep ball. 3rd and 1, the big thing is, where is the quarterback trying to hit the sneak along the front, right? Because now most of the time you're getting quarterback sneak in that situation. So more and more teams, especially in the CFL and U Sports level, have gone to like the off tackle quarterback sneak in this situation. So you want to make sure guys understand, are they going to run traditional quarterback sneak and get in behind the center and guard? Are they trying to get a little bit of depth and hit this in the off tackle area? And you want to make sure guys have a good understanding about where the ball is going to hit in that situation, because if you can steal one of those situations in a game, right, and get it stop on 3rd and 1, it's huge in Canadian football. And then 3rd and 2 plus, this kind of ties into their gotta have it plays, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But what are the plays that they're going to run when they absolutely need to have a first down? Right, so we'll look at all the 3rd and 2 plus situations and start to see a common theme of, here's the plays they trust the most. And for a lot of offenses, really it comes down to who's our best player at that point, right? And so the typical one for offensive coordinators is, don't think plays, think players in clutch situations. So you have to have a good understanding of who's their best guy, and when they absolutely need to pick up a first down, how are they going to try to get him the ball? So 3rd and 2 plus a lot of times comes down to not so much the play you're defending, but we can't let this guy beat us in this situation. So again, here's a couple examples that we had from our scouting report. Again, we're not highlighting everything on this. We'll give this to the guys, but really the only thing we had for a P and 10 situation with this team is we were going to get a lot more naked bootleg on the first play of a new drive against this team, right? So fake Zorro Sally for us is a fake zone read with the quarterback boot out the backside. They had a heavy tendency to either run that and run their bootleg stuff, or even drop back pass on the first play of a new series, which is different from a lot of teams, right? So now when our guys go on the field, they can understand, okay, ends, you got to make sure you see the ball handed off, because a lot of times the quarterback's going to keep the ball off of that zone action if it's P and 10. Right, so you can start to have the guys thinking about that a little bit. This is a different one. So this is 2nd and 2 to 3 situation against a team. Right, so again, in 5 receiver personnel, they had 7 snaps of 2nd and 2 to 3 going into this game. 6 of those 7 plays were RPOs, right? So now when we get into that 2nd and 2 to 3 situation against this team, what are our very best calls against RPOs, right? How can we make sure that we don't concede an easy throw in zone here? We're potentially going to play more man here. Or how can we bring pressure to the back and get somebody tight in coverage in behind where the quarterback's trying to throw the ball. But you had a pretty good idea going into this game that if you got into a 2nd and 2 to 3 situation, you were going to see RPO there. So now you can solely focus on what are our best RPO answers in that situation. Right. And then this is a pretty standard one. So 2nd and 7 to 10, they're 82% drop back pass out of their 5 receiver personnel. They're just giving you 6-man drop back protection. And so that's a pretty straightforward one. But now we're not going to see a lot of funky stuff there. It's pretty much just drop back pass game. So now what are our very best pass pressures against 6-man half slide protection? Okay. Once we do that, the next one is the backfield set tendency. So this one, there's a lot of variance in terms of like how much we can get week to week against each team. Okay. And so some teams do a very good job. And I think it's easier in Canadian football than it is in American football because of the motion rules. But you still see teams that don't do a good job using it. Some teams will still do very specific things with the back offset versus the back in pistol, right? Some teams do a good job of always starting the back in pistol and then he moves at the very last second. And so the defenders don't necessarily have a chance to diagnose where he is and what they're going to expect to see there. But there's still plenty of teams that do offset the back at certain times when they want to throw the ball or run RPO. And then other teams, they'll put them in pistol when they want to run their run game or play action stuff off of it. So again, this is from a specific game this year. You can see here, this is their gun weak stuff, gun strong, pistol sets, under center. And so when you look at this, if they were in gun weak or gun strong, they're basically 80% pass out of gun weak or gun strong. But now if they put that tailback behind the quarterback, right, if he's in pistol, it's 70% run. If it's under center, it was 100% run. So for this specific team, there's a huge tell as soon as we see the alignment of the back. If he's behind the quarterback at all, now we know we're defending run game, play action, downfield stuff, naked bootleg stuff off of their core run game. If they offset the back before the snap, we're getting drop back pass, we're getting RPO, right? And so you don't necessarily have it as clean as that. This was just 1 week where they had very specific tendencies, but again, you're trying to give as much to the guys pre-snap as they can so they can start to think about a couple things they're going to see. The hit charts are, for us, what we spend the very most time on during the week. And when we're doing our meetings with our guys ahead of practice, most of what we're showing them is in this formation, here's what we're expecting, right? And our prep week for the coaches, we're going to put all their formations up on the board. We're trying to go through and say, here's where they're trying to hit the ball on the front out of this formation. Here's who they're trying to throw the ball to. Here's the part of the field that they're trying to attack. Here's the run pass tendencies. You want to have a really, really good idea of what they're trying to do out of each formation, so that now after we've got each formation up on the board, okay, here's what we're going to see. Now you want to be able to go back to your defensive inventory and say, okay, here's the specific calls we need against each of these formations so that we can take away what they want to do, right? And we're very formation based with our calls. So we want to make sure our guys have a good understanding of what to expect. We want to be able to check into certain things against certain formations. But we want to make sure that our guys have a good understanding. If I see them line up like this, here's the 2 to 3 things that I can expect them to do out of this formation. And here's the 5 to 6 calls that we like out of this to take these things away. And really, as coaches, that's all we're trying to do is put them in the best possible calls that we can, not to take away every play, but to eliminate the highest percentage of plays that we're going to see out of that. Okay, and so I'll show a couple examples of this. This is a 2x3 set. So I'll talk a little bit about the hit chart in general here, and then specifically what information we would gain from this. In our scouting report, every formation that they've run the whole year will have a page that looks just like this with the formation drawn up. So we want to appeal to every learning style. So we don't just want to have data on the page. We want to have a visual there so that the guys who learn more visually can understand it. And then the guys who are more, kinesthetic learners, learn by actually doing it. We'll line those formations up on the field and review it again when we get on the field after meetings. But for this team, right, 2x3 set, the first thing that you're going to see here is a huge pass tendency. So they're 83% pass out of 2x3, right? And this team was consistent with that. All their 5R stuff was very pass heavy. The next big one here is their targets. So this is their 1 strong. He had 13 targets. This is their 2 strong. He had 7 targets. And then if you look at everybody else, it's 1, 3, 3, 1. So these 2 receivers to the field both had twice as many targets as anybody else on the field. So as soon as we see this, okay, when we're defending this team and they line up 2x3, they want to throw the ball to those 2 field receivers. What coverages do we have that are going to take that away? So now we're almost always going to try to get 3/2, whether it's the field half, field corner free safety, field half, field corner Sam. How can we make sure we get 3 guys freed up over there so that they cannot throw the ball to the 1 and the 2 strong, and we make them do something that they don't want to do out of that, right? And then these boxes down here, these are their pass zones, so where they're actually throwing the ball in the field, right? Short strong had 9 times, intermediate strong 6. Nothing else on the field had more than 2 or 3. So again, it reinforces that huge tendency that they are throwing the ball to the field when they line up 2x3. So we're not just going to run the same coverages against that as we would a team that's always attacking the boundary, right? And I put this example in next. So this is another 2x3 set against a different team, right? Again, it's a huge pass tendency, but this team did just the opposite. When they got into their 2x3 set, that number 1 strong had no targets the whole year. 2 strong had 2. But now when you come over to the boundary, that 3 week had 14 targets. 2 week had 9 targets. 1 week had 10 targets. So when we're playing these 2 teams, the coverages that we're going to run against these 2 teams out of 2x3, they need to be completely different. One team, you're trying to get 3/2 to the field. This team, you're trying to get 4/3 to the boundary the whole time. And now you're probably comfortable just leaving 2 guys over to the field because they don't want to throw the ball there, right? So the biggest point out of that is, to me, you're trying to figure out what do they want to do out of each formation. And then you got to make sure you absolutely do not allow them to do what they want to do, and they have to beat you doing something they don't want to do, right? Make them play left-handed. So if this team beats us by throwing the ball to the 1 strong, we have to live with that. But most teams aren't good enough to do, to win by throwing to their 4th or 5th guy, or by consistently doing things that they're not used to doing the whole year. Okay, and then here's another couple examples. So now this is a 2-back personnel group. This is a 2x2 set. So again, if you're looking at this, 2 week had 16 targets, 1 week had 11 targets. Nobody else had more than 3 or 4. So again, how can we tilt the coverage to the boundary and get 3 for 2 over there? You look at the pass zones. Okay, 12 short week, 10 intermediate week, 9 deep week. Nothing else is more than 1 or 2 or 3. So we got to make sure we get as many guys in coverage to the boundary as we possibly can. Okay, and then one more example. Again, this is 2x2 wing week. So the fullbacks offset to the boundary. 1 and 2 strong, again, have a lot more targets. But the big one here is now in the run game. For this team, when they put the fullback to the boundary, they didn't have a single run strong, right? Nothing perimeter strong, off tackle inside. But they ran the ball off tackle weak 7 times. They ran the ball perimeter weak 4 times. So now when we're looking at this in the run game, we know if the fullback is set to the weak side, they're going to try to run off tackle or perimeter stuff to the boundary. So now how can we bring pressure off that weak edge? Do we want to bring our weak half and weak corner, our Will in our weak half, Will and our free safety off the weak edge, and try to put a couple guys in that off tackle area once we see the fullback weak, right? Part of that is on you to build your defensive system so that you can dictate, where the pressure is coming from based on formation. So not just saying strong or weak, but we could run this to either side depending on where this guy lines up. But you want to make sure that you're making your calls based on what the offense is actually going to do and how they're going to try to attack you. Again, I've got a clip of this in film later if we get to it, but one of the big ones against this team, this was actually Ottawa, when they lined up 2x2 with the fullback weak, their number one thing was to run deep out, a double move off of their deep outs to the field. And you'll see our field corner understands that when he sees this formation. And we got a great clip of him just saying back when he sees the deep out, because he's anticipating the double move off of it. I'll fly through these last couple just so we can show a couple clips here. But field zones. All right, so these are the field zones that we'll actually break down. So backed up, when they're inside their own 10-yard line, what's their philosophy? You know, some teams, they just don't want to make a mistake down by their own goal line, so they'll run the ball twice, give up the safety if you get a couple stops. Some teams, they're going to take a shot whenever they're backed up. So are we worried about them trying to max protect and throw the ball downfield? Turn zone is a big one. So a lot of teams, as soon as they cross midfield, they picked up a couple first downs. Now they're going to try to take a shot, or that's where they're going to run one of their gadget plays. So you want to be able to give your guys that information of what to expect as soon as they do cross midfield. And then red zone, we obviously spend a lot of time on because those are critical plays like everybody else. So once they get across the 25, you know, they're expecting a lot more man pressure because you can't give up completion. So what are their man beaters? Are they going to try to bomber guys in and protect with more guys? A lot of teams will throw corner routes down there. And then low red zone, once they get inside the 10, they don't necessarily have enough field to stretch you vertically anymore. So now you're going to see a lot more pick and rub routes. So you have to have answers like Coach Cam was talking about earlier. How are we going to defend their stacks and their bunches down here? Okay. And what's our answers for their jumbo personnel when they get big people on the field and try to run the ball? This is more towards the end of the week now. And a lot of this stuff we don't necessarily give to the guys, but the coaches will know it. And then when we get into these situations in the games, we'll remind the guys of this coming up. But what do they want to do in 2 minutes, right? So what are their top pass concepts in a 2-minute situation when they're behind and throwing the ball either end of half or end of game? 4 minute is big, right? So 4 minute, you're down. You need to get a 2 and out. So what are their top run plays that you're going to see in that situation? What's their best calls to get stops against those runs? How much will they play action off of their run game? So will they run bootlegs when they're up late? Okay, or are they going to hand it off every time? Sudden change is huge. So again, most offense coordinators have a significant tendency of what they like to do in a sudden change situation. Sudden change for us is, okay, we're on the sideline talking, our offense turns the ball over. A lot of offensive coordinators, they know that you were in the middle of something, defense is coming onto the field hot, so let's try to catch them off guard and turn this turnover into a big play right away. So guys have to anticipate gadgets and home run shots in that situation. They're got to have it play. So if we get into a critical situation late in the game where they need a first down or they need to make a play, what are they going to call? What's their best play? And then again, this is something we won't give the guys, but reactive play calling is a big one that I'll look at. So what do they do after an explosive play, right? Will they try to create another one and call another home run shot? What do they do after a negative play? So if they lose yardage on first down, will they still throw the ball? A lot of teams, if they have a negative play on first down, they're going to call screen or draw on the very next play. What do they do on first down after they pick up 2 first downs? You want to have a good idea of how offensive coordinators are going to respond to certain situations. So that's all the information that we break down and give to the guys. In terms of how we actually do it from a weekly schedule, on Sunday, we'll review our score goals with the players. So the specific goals that we have on defense for, points allowed, turnovers, all those things. We'll review the previous game for a couple hours with the guys and go through all the corrections. And then after that, they're off for the day and coaches are working on our next opponent. Throughout the rest of this, the coaches are always a day ahead of the players, basically, in terms of what situations, what we're working on, right? So Monday, we'll distribute the scouting reports to our guys and we'll do like basically a personality profile of the offense that we're playing. So who are they? Are they a 2-back run play action team like a Western? Are they a team, like Toronto was last year where they're 5 receiver sets or empty sets and they're going to throw the ball or run RPOs all the time? What's the personality of this offense? And on Monday, our coaches are specifically working on first down, short yardage goal line, and high red zone, right? So we'll go through all the film, have all those tendencies scouted. And then the next day in practice, those are the situations that we're actually working on with the guys. So Tuesday practice, we're working first down, short yardage goal line, high red. That whole day, the coaches are working on second down, low red zone, and 2-point situations. So coaches are always a day ahead of the players. Players show up, they get the information in the meetings ahead of the practice. They know what situations are going to do each day of the week, so that the night before they can be looking through those clips on whatever film server you use, so that then when they show up to practice the next day, it's not the first time that they're seeing it. But it's good because it starts to establish a routine for the guys in terms of, I know on this day of the week, here's the situations that we are going to be working on, and they get used to the routine and also build a routine for themselves in terms of their film study. For us, the end of our week is flipped. So we do our walkthrough on Thursday, and then we do our final practice of the week on Friday. One of the best things that I like about this is we have no new install after Wednesday. We've covered all the situations that we're going to cover. So then Thursday, we've got our walkthrough, but prior to walkthrough a few hours, we'll have a meeting with all of our defensive starters and our key subs, so guys who are going to play a lot of snaps, and we go through the entire game plan with them. And all we're trying to ask them is, what are you comfortable with? What do you still not understand? And if there's anything that they don't understand on that Thursday meeting, we're just taking it out of the game plan at that point. And so we just went to that this past year, having that meeting on Thursday, and it was a huge help for us because you get a chance with some practice time still left in the week to review the game plan with the guys. You have to build a comfort level with them so that they're comfortable telling you, I have no clue what's going on in this. I don't understand it. And rather than continuing to rep something that guys just don't get, we just scrap it from the game plan at that point. And then when we go out for Friday practice, all those final reps that we're getting the last day of the practice week are all on things that our guys have said they're comfortable with. They understand completely. They understand what the adjustments are and how to respond to the different situations that they're going to see. And you're only repping stuff that guys have a really high comfort level with. So that Thursday meeting, I think, is huge because it creates a really honest dialogue with the guys. It allows them to take ownership for the game plan, and you get a really, really good feel for what they do or don't understand with time still left in the week. Okay, and then this is our weekly film progression for the guys, or for the coaches and for the players, right? So Sunday, we're watching the last 3 games from our opponent from start to finish. We're trying to establish, again, what's the personality of the offense and what do they want to do, who's their best players, who's their best plays, how do they respond to pressure, max pressure, zone pressure, all those things. Sunday to Wednesday, now we're going through the specific cut-ups. So Sunday to Wednesday, we're not watching full games at all. Everything we do has a situation attached to it. So it's whether it's the down and distance, field zone, whatever. We're trying to get a very clear picture of what they want to do in all these different situations. We're focusing on the formation hit charts. What are they trying to do out of this formation in this part of the field? And the ones that they're in a lot, you have to have multiple answers for. If it's only comes up once or twice, then maybe you're good only having 1 or 2 answers for it. You want to start to pay attention to specific formation variations. So what do their receivers do if they have a tighter than normal split, if they have a wider than normal split? And then once we get into Thursday, Friday, coaches do this, players do this, and I'm a huge advocate of this, and I think it makes a huge difference. Thursday, Friday, we actually go back, and now we're not watching the cut-ups anymore. We're watching games from start to finish again. And what we tell our guys is when you're watching film in your room, you see the formation, you run the play right up until it's about to be snapped, but you want to know the personnel, the formation that's on the field. Stop the play before the ball is snapped and verbalize out loud, here's what I'm expecting when I take into account personnel, formation, down and distance, all those things, and then run the play, right? And by that point in the week, if you've done a good job in your prep, you should be, 70+% of the time calling out, 2 or 3 things that you're expecting to see in that situation. If you can do that, you're ready to play. You've got a good understanding of what you're about to see, and it creates that confidence in the guys that they are really well prepared for the game. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to talk about here before I show a couple clips, game day, how we carry the prep week over into the actual game. The first quarter, really, we're running the stuff that we have game plan specific for that week, so the things we think should work. All we're trying to answer by the end of the first quarter is this the same as what we prep for, or is this different from what we prep for, right? And so by the end of the first quarter, we want to be able to have the defense gathered on the sideline and say, this is exactly what we prep for. All the tendencies are there. The game plan's good. Or we want to say they're doing this, this, and this different. Here's why they're doing this different. And here's what our answers need to be. Okay. Second and third quarter. And this is something I got from Coach Knox, and it made a huge difference for me in this understanding. Every week you go into it, you've got your game plan, like your plan A, but you also want to make sure you go into every game with plan B and C. So plan A is, what do we want to do, right? So if you look at stopping the run game, what do we want to do to stop the run? Maybe they've got a really, really good receiver. And so we want to be able to stop the run with, a lighter box or an even box so that we can still keep two guys over their best receiver. Okay. Now, when you get into the second quarter, you got to say, have we been able to stop the run doing that? Or, okay, this isn't working. Our plan B is, now we can't double this guy all the time. We got to get the extra guy in the box. Okay. But we're still going to try to play zone so that we've got eyes on this receiver and we potentially have some help in the middle of the field. Now, what's our plan C? Okay, this isn't working. Now we got to get even more guys into the box, and now we got to take our chances with this guy on the outside. So you can't just go into the game with the game plan of what you want to do. You have to have answers already built in. So here's what we want to do, but here's the couple things we're going to go to if what we want to do isn't working, right? And second, third quarter, you're continually making those adjustments. How do we match up front? Are we able to stop the run? All those things. And then once you get into the fourth quarter, now we're not talking about the tendencies or what they're doing anymore. Now it's all situational football. So now you're always communicating to the defense, okay, we're going in a 2-minute situation, 4-minute, there's 7 minutes left and they're down 2 scores. So now we're playing 3-down football. So second down is going to be a little bit different. And once you get into that fourth quarter, the clock really overtakes everything. So now the most important factor is the clock and the scoreboard, as opposed to some of the other stuff that you've prepped throughout the week. Okay, so I know I've got like 1 minute left here. I'll just pull up a couple clips to show you some examples of things that you can do and how this can potentially translate into the game. Right, so the first one here, this was a 2x3 set with the back motioning out. So this team, I think I showed this clip earlier, but they pretty much only threw the ball to the 2 and 3 weak out of this formation. So as this runs, you can see we've got a double team on 3 weak here. We've got a double team on 2 weak, and then everybody else is manned up across the board. So the only 2 guys that they're actually trying to throw the ball to, we've got doubled. Again, this is not a coverage that you would run every single week, but when you see a formation, they've got a tendency for they're only throwing to these 2 guys out of this formation. Why wouldn't we just double the 2 guys that they want to throw the ball to, as opposed to trying to worry about everybody else? Okay, so that one, again, is one that worked out pretty well. This is a 2nd and 2 situation. So this is, again, an example where they've got a tendency to run the ball to their fullback in short yardage situations. So this is their fullback lined up out wide out here. So this is a blitz we had called where we were bringing 2 off the edge to wherever the fullback was. Right, so in this case, we're bringing our Sam and our strong half off the edge, right? They're trying to run a gap play to the fullback here, and we're able to get a stop on 2nd and short because we're bringing extra guys right to the point of attack. Okay, and then I'll just show you one more here. So again, this is the situation that I talked about earlier, 2x2 set with the fullback offset weak. Okay, so this was a huge double move alert for us. They were going to run their deep out and up. So if you watch our field corner here, he sees the formation. He sees the fullback set weak, right? He does a great job never even biting on that deep out. He stays over the top. Our halfback understands he's probably getting a double move, so he's able to push his zone even more over top of that number 1. And we've got 2 guys in great position to take away a home run because they're expecting a double move here. And then we're also bringing 2 guys off the edge to where the backs are in protection. Probably should have had a sack here. Okay, but quarterback does a good job escaping out of the pressure there. All right, so that's it for me. I don't know if there's time for any questions or anything else if you want to get the next one, but appreciate you guys having me.
Awesome job. Yeah, there is one quick question. Does basing out of quarters force you to carry more contingencies due to the lack of good game film versus similar defenses?
Not really. I mean, there's enough teams who run some variation of quarters up here. The other thing is, like, quarters is our base, but you also want to have enough complementary coverages in there. So we're still going to run like middle of the field close stuff. We still run a bunch of cover 3. One of the things I think it goes back to is your training camp install. And so if you're going to base out of a quarters coverage, you know you're going to see the same 4 or 5 beaters all year long, right? You're going to see your downfield scissor stuff. You're going to see mills. So you're going to see the post over top of a curl or a dig by an inside receiver. So right from day one, when you install that, you'll put in your base rules. But I think one of the big things is whatever coverages you base out of, you have to teach the guys, here's where it's strong, here's where it's weak. And right from day one of camp, you need to rep as many times as you possibly can the 4 or 5 concepts that are the absolute toughest thing to cover in that. Right? If you get the route concepts that you want, it's going to be really easy because it's playing right into your base rules. But you have to teach guys, here's what we're going to see all year long in this. This is what every offense is going to try to do against quarters with their own like little flavor put on it, but it's going to be the same concepts over and over. And you rep that over and over and over. Guys are communicating as soon as we call a quarters, they should be alerting scissors every single time. Right? Because that's the worst thing we could possibly see there. And then if it's anything else, it's easy. So always alert the worst thing you could possibly see there. If you're playing cover 3 all the time, guys should be alerting and talking about, we're going to get 4 verts. Here's what we're about to do to defend it. And then if it's not 4 verts, it becomes easy because it plays into the base rules. So there are quarters teams. We're able to get some idea either by past games against the opponent or against similar defenses, what they're going to do against it. But a lot of it comes down to making sure that you're putting guys in the toughest situation possible right from day one of camp out of your base coverages.
Awesome. Well, that was the only question that popped up on YouTube Live. So great job, Scott.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks to you, Coach Brady. That was good.